Hey everybody. I had a call today with an editor where we were talking about de-essing. While we were talking, I had a couple of thoughts that popped up, and I'll discuss those once we talk about de-essing. De-essing is one of those tools that is easily overused. The editor I was talking about, we were meeting to more or less discuss how to use the de-esser. In this case, he was using the Pro Q3 and its dynamic EQ settings to simulate an EQ. But what it turned out being was using two of those and going overly aggressive with the de-essing because the sibilance was, he was working on my voice. I do have sharp sibilance, and for some editors, they have sensitivities to that. So it's really easy for us to be overly aggressive with de-essing. And the goal with when using de-ess isn't to try to completely eliminate that sharpness or the harshness. It's to take the edge off. So in this example, this is my voice. I will play it with just EQ. So this is what the EQ curve looks like. We're not doing a whole lot. But here's the raw audio. I think it's tough because AI can't listen. So a really good example I use is you can know how to cut on the zero axis. So in this case, it doesn't sound super in your face to me. But let's look at a de-esser. This is the FabFilter Pro DS. This is my go-to de-esser. I just love how easy it is to dial in. But let's dial in something that was on par with a really aggressive, overly done EQ. I think it's tough because AI can't listen. So a really good example I use is you can know how to cut on the zero axis. This is what happens when we just apply really aggressive settings to a de-esser, trying to completely remove that sharp sibilance. It's never going to sound good. And some people have, like me, between the way my mouth muscles work, all of that, for some reason, it creates really sharp sibilance when I speak. For other people, it's not as noticeable, so it will depend on the person. But someone who has really sharp sibilance, you're never going to be able to dial it completely out. Trying to do so is going to end with results like this. So when I demonstrate how to use a de-esser, I'll start with an extreme setting, and then I'll dial it back until I hear all of the lisp type qualities disappear, but I'm still reducing or taking the edge off that sibilance. I think it's tough because AI can't listen. So a really good example I use is you can know how to cut on the zero axis. I think it's tough because AI can't listen. So a really good example I use is you can know how to cut on the zero axis. I think it's tough because AI can't listen. So a really good example I use is you can know how to cut on the zero axis. I think it's tough because, so to me, in my ears, this sounds a lot better. It definitely sounds more natural. We're not getting those artifacts from too aggressive of a DS setting. And that's what we need to be aware of. When we DS, if we do too much, we can start to take out too much of that frequency range, which can make it sound like somebody does have a lisp when they actually don't. And that's not something we want to be doing. So de-essing is very much a situation of compromise and trying to evaluate, does the after sound better than the before? If we're too aggressive, I say that the change in the person's speaking is a negative compared to having a little sharpness in it. Now that we've talked about best practices of de-essing, I wanted to talk about the couple of ideas or thoughts I had while talking to this editor. The first one is that we, as editors, we need to be aware of how our ears are influencing what decisions we're making. Younger editors who have more sensitive hearing, they're going to be more sensitive to higher frequencies and probably lower frequencies. So their natural inclination is to cut and probably be a little over aggressive in those cuts because they aren't thinking about how sensitive their ears are compared to everybody else. It's the opposite of what some older editors might face, where as our ears get more and more broken in, we're less sensitive to higher frequencies. Some of us might have some hearing loss where we don't hear the higher frequencies as well. So we might find ourselves compensating in the form of boosting to make up for that. We need to be aware of this, and we need to really think about how other people are hearing what we are mixing. This is where working on an island really does become a problem because we can't get enough feedback from other people as to how they are hearing what we are doing. Everything we do is biased by our ears and how our brains process what we hear. So it's harder to get that unbiased opinion and just to get a variety of opinions. So we know if maybe we're making things a little too dull because we're cutting out too much high end, or we're making things too bright because we're adding in too much high end. One of the benefits of podcast editing school, and you can find the link down in the notes, is that you can get feedback on your work so that you aren't working on an island. You can post your audio, get feedback, not just from me, but from the group. So you're getting that variety of opinions and input. So we become more confident in our mixing abilities. And the other thing that kind of popped into my head when I was talking with him is it is important, at least I feel it's important, that we go through and revisit our templates and presets every so often. Because as we edit episodes, as we go year to year doing this, we better develop our critical ear. So what we thought sounded good a year ago, if we were to start from scratch and redo our plugin chain, our EQ settings, our compression settings, we might find that we can get things sounding even better today. But we have to remember to go back and revisit our settings every once in a while. I'll try to do this when I start a new season or after a client's been on hiatus for a little bit, instead of just opening up the show's template, dropping the files in and just getting started with the editing. I go through and listen to everything start from scratch with my EQ and compression settings and just listen. Usually, I found that I end up with a better sounding result than the previous template. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind. I hope this has been helpful to you, and I'll talk to you all next time.